Parshas Noach, the story where at the end of the flood, Noach sends out a messenger to find out what's going on the outside before they see if it's time to leave the teva yet. So Noach ended up sending a dove, which makes sense because Chazal tell us that there are certain similarities between Klal Yisrael and the dove, one of them being the dove's modesty and the dove's refinement. But originally Noach sent a raven, and the raven just flew around the teva and it didn't end up going. We find later in history also, I believe, that Eliyahu Hanavi chose a raven to be the messenger. So the Gemara in Sanhedrin, interesting Gemara in Hachelek Anaf Kof Ches Amud Beis, the Gemara says, Vayishlach Ches Orev, Amrei Shlakish, that Tshuva Nitzches Heshiva Oren V'Noach. The raven gave Noach a winning argument. He said to him, Tshuva Nitzches, I don't know when. He says, Rabbecha Soneini, V'Atasanesi. Hashem dislikes me and you dislike me. Hashem dislikes me because Hashem chose that from the tahar birds you should have 7, from the tameim you should have only 2. So we see that Hashem is biased against us unclean animals. And you also seem to dislike me because you have species where you have 7 birds, and instead you're sending me when you only have 2 of me. Let's say the sarcham or sartzina strikes me. Let's say I get hit by cold or heat and I get killed. So now the world's going to be missing ravens because there's only 2 ravens. I'm the male. If I die, there ain't no more ravens. So this is why the raven, one of the reasons the raven refused to go. Maybe you want my wife. Maybe that's why you're sending me to my death. Noach says back to the raven, Rasha. But mutterly necessarily. The animal, the one that I'm mutter to, meaning my wife, I'm not living with in the teva. But necessarily, Lakoshkein, you think I'm going to live with your wife who's usher to me altogether? Even from what's permitted to me, I'm staying away from. Mino and Denasu, how do we know that he was usher to cohabit? When the Torah talks about entering the teva, it says you and your sons and your wives and their sons, and it clearly separates the women and the men. When they're leaving the teva, it says, you go with your wife and your sons and their wives. So in the first place, it put Noach and his sons, and then his wife and his daughter-in-laws to show that separation that should be in place. And Yochanan says, here we learn that they were forbidden to procreate while they were in the teva. I believe the vart is a vart in Nosei Ba'olam Chavera. When the whole world is in suffering, is not a time for you to be enjoying yourself. You should be mishtatef in their tsar, be connected in their pain. And the Gemara goes on to tell us, in fact, that there were 3 that cohabited in the teva, and they all were afflicted. The dog, the raven, and Cham. The dog's punishment, it's condemned to be tied up. One of the pshatim that dogs are kept on a leash. That's their punishment for cohabiting in the teva. The orev rock. The orev spits a lot. The raven has to spit seed from its mouth into the mouth of its mate. And Cham was also Wakabalra. That Cham's son Cush was also, he was punished with skin discoloration. They're all punished for being Shimshu Bateva. Marsha gives an interesting explanation of why he sent the Orev, in a sense, is it's not really a winning argument. The idea of a Tshuva Nitzchis, I think what it means is that this is something that the raven stood by, and in this argument, and it sounds like Noach's response a little bit is that that's part of the reason I chose you, is because you're a Rasha and you were cohabiting in the teva. And therefore you've lost my respect. You're less important than the other birds. And second of all, I don't really have to worry about you because your wife is pregnant. And therefore the world's not going to lose you. It's not true. That's sort of what he's hinting to him by sending him. But at the end of the day, he didn't, it says the Marsha, the raven wasn't makabel his answer. And also to take himself out of the chashad, that the raven was saying, oh, maybe you have a reason you want to get rid of the male of this species. So then he sent the Yonah, because the Yonah is not going to be choshim. The Yonah being the dove, being the most modest of the birds. I think we have to learn a little bit from the raven There's a concept called posel, b'mumo posel, that people tend to project, and when they have a flaw, they project it onto others. And that seems to be what the raven is doing here. It's immoral, so it's projecting that onto Noach, and that we could get so blind, that it could get so blinded that you're dealing with the one person who was worthy of surviving the flood, the only sole survivor. Obviously a very holy person is able to have these kind of mindsets about Noach. I don't know if you can say shmooze from a bird's mindset to ours, but we also tend to project, and we also tend to blow things out of proportion, something we have to be cognizant of. Here with you another interesting part on this Gemara, the Chafetz Chaim, our Torah, the Chafetz Chaim writes the pshat in this Gemara. He says, you see that the raven didn't go on the shlichus. We see from here Megagu and Schus Ayidei Misharoi was that. It's a concept of Megagu and Schus Ayidei Zakai, that good things come about through a fitting person. It's that he says it only would come about the Schus to be the Shliach of Noach from one who's fit for it. Ve'in Shlichus shal davar tov u'moil yechol yasadei misheno hagon v'roi. That the Shlichus of a good thing would not come about through one who's not fit. That the raven wasn't deserving of being the shliach, and that's why he wasn't able to, that's why practically he wasn't able to be the shliach, because he wasn't zoche to be the shliach. He wasn't worthy of being the shliach. They bring in the footnotes that the Chafetz Chaim was very makbid to try to get involved as much as he could when they were trying to send the messengers to the government, that it should be the right people, it should be the zakaim, that he felt that the person who's going to be the shliach is very important. Reminds me of an interesting story, the concept of the medical establishment, that there was a story with the Rashiva of Henoch Zatzal. He had a certain medical condition, I don't remember what it was called, a rare condition, and he was barely able to walk. It really made his life very, very difficult. And they found a certain specialist who was able to do a procedure that they thought would be helpful. And they brought the Rashiva, and the Rashiva said something about HaKadosh Baruch Hu helping, and the doctor said something that made it clear he was an apikoros, I don't need Hashem's help. And the Rashiva walked out, he says, I'm not going to that doctor. And the Talmidim were all begging him, Rebbe, you could barely walk, he's the specialist, you need him. I'm not going back to that doctor. Not fit to be the shliach, I'm not going back to that doctor. And eventually they found him another doctor that did the procedure, Baruch Hashem had helped him. So I heard from my Rav of Welcher that he learned many years later that in fact that they discredited this procedure as being not a helpful procedure. It's not used anymore. And so he felt that maybe that was, Rashiva knew at the end of the day, whether a procedure helps, doesn't help, it all comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The most important thing is the doctor should be a good shliach. It should be a fitting shliach. You saw this person is not fit to be a good shliach, and I'm not using him, and that's the end of it, because the results come from Hashem, and it's important that we have the right shliach. Just an interesting yesod, a few ideas about learning from the story with the raven. Have a wonderful Shabbos.